Raiders postpone drafting a quarterback until 2025. The news is surprising and is driving fans crazy. Some say that by hiring Gardner Minshew, the Raiders have already given their message. They already have a quarterback capable of guiding the team to the playoffs. Let's look at the details of this statement. Subscribe to the channel to receive all the information about the Raiders. When the NFL draft begins next Thursday night, all eyes, at least in the first round, will be on 3 teams. The Vikings, Broncos, and Raiders, who pick consecutively, have all been in the midst of trade rumors for months, with each team seriously lacking at quarterback. But with the semi-large contract Las Vegas handed Gardner Minshew this offseason, are the Raiders signaling that 2025 is the year they will go for a QB? With more than a few holes still on their roster, a big swing for a QB at 13 this year seems pretty unlikely at this point. But what are the pros and cons of waiting until next year for a QB? What a great and topical question. For starters, the Raiders will likely end up with one of the elite non-QB prospects in this year's draft. If we assume that 4 of the top 12 picks will be QBs, and that 3 more of them will be wide receivers, that leaves a ton of options for Vegas. OL2? CB1? Maybe Michael Penix ends up being a star, but it's hard to argue that getting QB5 this year is a smarter idea than CB1. There will be plenty of opportunities to roll the dice on a QB on days 3 and 4. And frankly, the Raiders aren't a QB away. Trading down is boring, but for teams in Vegas' position, it makes a lot of sense. Stock up on the top 100 picks, fill out the list, and build that way. This year's QB draft class is special, but there are always other top QB prospects on the way. Some college QBs in next year's draft include Colorado's Shedeur Sanders, Georgia's Carson Beck, Penn State's Drew Aller, and Texas' Quinn Ewers. And maybe none of those guys would challenge Williams, Daniels, and May this year, but the point remains. There are always more QBs on the way. It doesn't seem very sensible to strive for that to happen this year, just because a lot of other teams are too. 17 Gardner Minshew games, basically, or 9 games by Minshew and 8 by Aiden O'Connell. Either way, it won't be fun. Bridge QB seasons are always somewhat dull, and it's admittedly difficult to drum up enthusiasm for a year the Raiders are openly selling as a building year. Plus, I wouldn't blame you if a Sanders, Beck, Ewers, Aller group didn't exactly thrill you. There's always potential with QBs at the top of the draft, but there's no denying that the 2025 draft class is a step up in terms of talent from this year's group. Teams have to strike eventually, and kicking the can down the road because next year technically exists gets dangerously close to being organizational indecision, which is how you end up at 7 to 9 forever. And if you take your non-QB first-round pick, which the Raiders have some recent experience with, you'll get absolutely nothing. So you have to hire Gardner Minshew.